Okay, so ready to do some welding. So the PPE we're going to have to use is a welding gauntlet. The reason for that is it stops UV burn if you had a short glove on. So same as getting severe sunburn. They're quite thick, so they stop sparks and heat from getting to your hands. A couple of different welding screens. This one here, you can see on there, adjusts on the outside. So for this setting, this thickness of metal, the setting you really want is anything between about 9 and 10 EW. So that's how dark this is for electric welding. These are self-dimming. This is my one, mine adjusts inside. So when you look up in the top of there, you've got 3 little switches that do delay how dark it is, things like that. So you've got these ones you want set on weld, you don't want them set on grind, otherwise you're going to, I mean, it's not going to damage your eyes too much, but not going to damage your eyes at all, I don't think, but it just give you a headache if you've got it set on weld. It'd be really bright. Legally now, I've put a photo of this on there. Fixed extraction for MIG welding must be 25 centimetres. That is the size of it on there. So it has to be right above, the hood has to be right above it. If you haven't got fixed extraction, there's mobile extraction that you'll have all seen. There's also masks, P3 mask. We've got a P2 for fumes. Don't use these dust ones. Yeah, so you need to know what the masks are for, whether they're fume, dust, particulate sort of these everything. Right, so what we're going to do first, you've just spent, well, I mean, it didn't take me as long, but you're going to take quite a while making this thing. So what normally happens with guys is they make it and it's pretty good, they bring it in here and that's when it all goes wrong. They come in here, they haven't done any welding for a few weeks, maybe longer, and they might not have been that good at the welding at the time. They come in here thinking that it's going to go perfectly well and it doesn't. So what I tend to do is I get a piece that I used to as a template. It's always worth making the template first, just to make sure it all goes well, and I put a cut in it. So I'm going to tack up the cut and then weld it and see how it goes. I've also put a couple of holes in the bottom, so then we can clamp that before we do the plugs and test weld that as well. So I'll just do that now. So I've turned the machine on, I've picked it up, I've done all the checks as per on the previous video for the mag welding. And first thing I've noticed that is, look, this is all loose, it's come undone. So pre-use checks will save you a lot of time later. So I get the wire out a little bit, cut that off so it's nice and short. I can hear the gas coming through. I've got the gas set on about 10 to 12 litres a minute because it's a flow, not pressure. What I'm going to do then is I'm going to put the glove on, helmet on. I'm going to try and tack up the corners to see how it works on this setting. First off though, I'll just do a quick weld on there just to make sure it's all good. Yeah, that sounds good enough. So these currently line up perfectly because I've just put a cut in. So I'm going to tack the corners. I normally count 1, 2, 3, and if it's all going well, you should end up with a decent tack in it. Oh, it's hard to get it in the camera. And when you turn it over, this is the more important part, you've got some penetration there. If you weld all the way from here to here, but there's no penetration through the steel, so it's all sitting on top. Then you grind it off. In an accident, that's just going to split open. Something crashes into it, it's just going to split like this, like it's a piece of paper. So any weld that you're grinding off has to penetrate fully through to the other side, which isn't that easy to always achieve, especially as we're going to be doing some pulse welding, which is on off, because it overheats if you don't. Some sort of stitch welding where you sort of go backwards and forwards, do a small bit here and there, again to spread out the heat. And when these welds sit on top, when you try and put another weld next to them, the weld takes the heat away, so it doesn't always penetrate next to the previous weld or the previous tack. So what I would normally do with this is I would put all the tacks in, I would sand the tops of the tacks off, and then do the welding after that, so that I know it's actually going to penetrate all the way through the back. So I'll put a couple more tacks on this. We won't bother sanding it off. I'm just going to do the welds and have a look, see what it's like. Okay, so you need to vary the times of the weld depending on what it's sounding like. Like I said, on the back I'll take a photo of this, but either side of the original tacks there is a gap. So did this just to show what happens. I'll take a camera, like a photo of that to show you. And then we move on to that. Okay, so we've got it a little bit closer. I've got my rolls, I've got panel hammer with a cross pane chisel back. I'll put that on there, and straight away that is 1 to 1.5 mil out. I always like to tack on these points first before I work on this bit, because if you get these in the right place, that bit there on the curve is much more likely to be correct, especially if you've got this reasonable here. So to get that in, I'm going to have to put this in the gap, pull it in a little bit, and feel it. It's a little bit high, so I need to tap it down. It's a little bit high, so I'm going to have to give it a bit harder whack. Okay, so it doesn't quite like it, so I'll have to alter the mould or the get it closer to the edge, so it's pulling the edge down. That feels better already. And to be honest, That's pretty good. Right, so tack on that corner. So I can't, personally, having done this for 30 years or whatever, I can't do this with a glove on. There's no way you can feel it. So you have to be really, really careful, or wear a thinner glove. But that one is good. So what I'm going to do now is try and get this one. I think this one's got the same problem. That grip is a little bit too far out. So the two of them are sitting like this slightly. So we're putting that grip into the edge. It's going to pull the top down. So I'll loosen that one off. Loosen that one off. Come all the way in. Put it in there. Okay, so hold it in the right place. You're not going to be able to see this one, but I don't think that matters. So if you've had to hold it in position until it's no longer red, because if you let go of it when it's red hot, it will just move because the metal is still molten. It's not too bad. There's a little bit of a natural dip in it, but we can worry about that afterwards because this is still even. This is all pretty good here. These bits here, this isn't quite so good here. So to achieve that, we're going to have to release this again and pull it out slightly, check it. This is a lot easier on a car because the car doesn't move about. Okay, so that feels good there. It isn't quite here yet. So put this in. A bit of a tweak there. It's just cooled down now. So I can pull this in, and you can see that, possibly see that moving in there. So this isn't quite in the right place. Plus my rule's in the way. But here I can put a tack, and it will be good. So I put my glove on to make sure I don't get any UV or sparks on this hand. The other hand's pretty far away on the torch, so it'll be fine. Now when you put one into a gap like that, into a corner, inside corner, it's worth sometimes pulling the trigger a little bit longer to make sure it goes right in, because it takes the heat away from the weld. Cool down. Let me have a look. It's got a slight half a mil probably. This is feeling pretty good. Now if one was sitting a little bit lower, I can take this whole grip off. We call it a mole grip. Self-locking clamp from here, put it onto this one, and then it's going to hold them much more level, so that's good. More tack. Like that. Feel this one. This wants to go. This feels good here, but it's a little bit out there, so I'm just going to give that a little tap in here. Right. Good. This takes longer because I keep having to put my glasses on in between, because inside of my helmet I've got little, I don't know what they call them really, glasses, that just clip in. So you can't keep glasses on when you're doing it. Right, so I'm just going to take these off. Have a look at this. So that one's in slightly. So I'm going to put this, pull it out. Don't know if you see that move. Trying to grip over this time so that it doesn't interfere with the bench. Tiniest. Yeah, spot on. But it's lifting slightly there, so we can only put a tack inside that corner. Yeah, all good. This is a corner, it's going to quite easily burn away, so I pulsed it up, like that. So what we need to do now is the same thing for this one, and we're nearly there. Put that on there, there's a tiny bit out there. Tap it in, same problem. Perfect. Check it on the end here. It's a bit hot now, so I wouldn't touch it. Decent tack on the side. Now, check. Are these level? Not perfect. I'm going to rotate it and come to this one. Now all we can do with this one is try and get the edges dead level. So I remove this clamp, hold it, put it on gently. It's not quite the right place, so I release the pressure. Still not quite. Release the pressure. Feels good. Put tack on it. Sorry, put the clamp back on. Tack it. Now I know this one's fine as well, because I just felt that. Tack there. Okay. Last one. So same idea, going to put that on. Too far. Squat on. Okay, so we've got most of it tacked in place. What tends to happen on a sill like this is that the heat will still pull it in slightly, because even though you've got this back in here, it's not really as strong as it would be on a car, so it's going to tend to pull the back up slightly. So what we've found is that this gap is closed up until they're pretty much touching. This one's still got a decent gap, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it away, re-saw those gaps, just to make sure that when I weld it, it doesn't distort too much. although actually if I pull on that, that's not too bad. Okay, well I'm going to just cut that one. Okay, so cut that, that's got a lovely gap. Not a problem that you're probably going to come across if you're actually doing it on the car though, so that's not too much of an issue. It's cooled down a little bit now, so when I feel here, I feel this one is very slightly high, so tiny tap just to see if that fixes it. If it doesn't, next to a weld I can go in with this and that will just bend it very slightly where the weld is holding it. So across there, this is good to hear. Now we've got another swage line. These swages are where we want to put the tacks because they're going to hold it the best. So take it there. This is out slightly, so a little bit of pressure when I tack it. Hold it till it's not red anymore. Okay. So I can take these off and then check this. That's pretty good. Really good. Just don't like this side a little bit. Going to have to give it the tiniest little bit there. Again, if you're doing this for the first time, be careful what's hot and what isn't. They cool down really quickly though because of the amount of metal that's cold, sucking the heat out. But if you burn yourself, it's quite painful. Okay, so I'm just going to put one in here. Okay, they all feel good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put one exactly in the centre of each one and gradually tie down the shape. Okay. A little welder's trick, anytime you're going to touch anything in a welding bay, you don't have someone that's just been welding, give it a little tap. Put your hand near it so you can feel any heat coming off it. Right, so all we need to do now is fill in a couple of gaps so that they're all held nice and tight here and here. And then that's all in position. We'll sand the tops of the tacks off. Then the next point we'll do is we'll weld in these and then we'll fully weld that. Well, because at the moment this could still have some movement in it when we put this weld in. So, 2 more tacks. And then sand the tops off. Okay, so before you use any grinders, make sure that there's no flammables around. So if I was doing it where we were cutting earlier, there was some of the solvent spray nearby and some of the paper I used for the templates when we were doing the thing yesterday. So So I'd have to move all those because they could easily catch fire. Something like the flammables liquids could actually explode. So be really careful. I'm doing the welding bay, but what you can remember is that the sparks that come off, because we actually need to remove metal now, so it's no good using the fibre discs. We have to actually use grinding discs. So this is 60 grit on there, and we've got 60 grit on the belt sander. Remember, the metal that comes off, if you're near a car, like say you're working next to another car and you're grinding, those little bits of metal will burn into the paint, into any plastic trim, even into the glass. And I've done that before. When I first started doing this, I ground something and then I found that there was all bits of metal in the glass, and you have to try and get it out. Welding's even worse. Welding, little spatter from the welders will burn into all sorts of things. Amount of times I've seen people have to flatten polish or repaint panels, or they buy new drop glass or something like that for a car. So be really careful. Also, what you can remember is that the welder is sitting over there, and it's air cooled. You can hear it. It's got a fan that sucks air in from one side and blows out the other. So it's going to suck any of this in if I grind onto the welders, and can mess the welders up. So what I need to do is be cautious about the direction the sparks are going in. So the idea with this is that you take the weld off without affecting the surface of the metal, which isn't always easy, but here we go. So once you get a little bit lower, it just touches the side a little bit, but what can you do? Take a photo of that. When you get these new, the abrasive goes right up to the edge really nicely. Just that little bit of grinding, we can see that on the edge of there, it's starting to go a little bit white, which means it's losing the abrasive. That means that it won't cut right on the edge. When you're doing a weld that's right into a corner, the only part that's going to touch is the edge. So you need new ones of these to get right into those corners. So that's not always easy. Also, belt sanders can be okay, so I'll show you belt sander on here. A little bit hard to control though, so you miss a little bit and you end up taking the metal out, which I just did a little bit on that one. But again, edge of a belt sander you can use just on here, that's quite handy. So I'll do that and then I'll come back. Okay, so I've sanded all those back. I'll take a photo in a second. But what I need to do now is test to see if I can do the plug welds okay. So what I've done is I've turned the wire speed down very slightly, because sometimes it can come out a little bit too fast to make the weld a bit high. So I've balanced it in the top of here. Nice and vertical above it. So you can hear by that, wire speed's a little bit low. So I'll have to amend it. So I'll get the wire speed up a little bit. I might just go from number 2 to number 3 on the power setting. Much better. Yeah, so this one was a little bit slow. You can hear it sort of going. That one's quite nice. You see it's come through. So I'm going to put it over the edge of the table so that the grips will get it. You just need to alter this a little bit. So I'm just going to weld these. Make sure to clamp it. Weld from the, if that's the circle you're going to be welding up on the edge, start just before the edge and weld around. Sometimes if you start over here and come back this way, the heat build up will burn the edge away. So each time you're going to do one, move it along, clamp it again. Not a fan of that. It's a bit too limiting, so I'm just going to put, well, to be honest, that's not going to move now. What I'll do is when I do the other side, I'll clamp the middle two and then the outside two I think I'll just do on their own. So I'm going to clamp either side of that one. We're just making access a little bit hard to get to with the size of the torch and everything else. Now what I need to do is fill in all the gaps between all the other welds. So I'm going to start where you've got a tack. As you can see, it's quite smooth now. I've got a tack and a tack. I'll put a tack in the middle and weld towards the other tack. That one cool down, I'm going to go somewhere else. See what I mean, how easy it is to blow a hole. Held it just a tiny bit too long and it just put a tiny little hole, but then I filled it up again. So you just relax off of the weld, let it take a little bit of time, watch it, let it cool down slightly. And when you start on the piece where there's nothing, there's no tack there, a little bit quicker. As you get towards the bit where the tack is, a little bit longer because the tack's going to absorb the heat. Okay, so I'm just going to carry on, finish that off. Okay, so done all the welding, brought it back over onto a different table where there's better light so that I can do the final grinding off. As I mentioned earlier on over there, look, if we turn this way, we had this from when we did the manufacture of the Sill, so I need to get rid of all that. That's quite important that that's well out of range. I also moved the camera to the left-hand side because the tools I'm going to use, they all spin in a certain direction, and we have to watch out which way the sparks are going to go. Okay, so I moved all those. I'm going to put some gloves on. You want a mask when you're doing this so that you can don't breathe in the bits of metal that come from it. The tiny little shards, if you breathe them in, they're sort of going to go into your lungs and then corrode inside your lungs, go all rusty. But I'll just show you this for a second. I've put a few different tools out so you can have a look. Got my glass, my PPE, my glasses on. So I'm going to use 36 grit grinder on this with a nice new disc on it, so I can get into those corners that I talked about earlier. So it makes a nice little cut in, but not too far. Then I'm just going to turn that round so that before I wear that disc out, I can do the same on these ones. So that's gone in that way. What I really need to do is turn it over, put it in a vise to finish the other sides off. So I'll do these flats for now. So I'll take off the edge of the welds. trying to not have it flat so it cuts on the whole disc, trying to angle it up so it only cuts on the very front. Try not to take too much away from either side. You're going to end up taking a bit away, but yeah, try as best you can. So I'll carry on and do a bit more of that. Okay, so I've finished sanding it off, 36 and 60 grits using different tools. There's a couple of places where it's just slightly out of line that you can see the marks, but you'd have to take a lot more care over it to sort of get it spot on. You can get it spot on, but it's a lot more work in advance. All I'm going to do now is finish off. I've done the other side, sanding over it with an 80 grit, just on a diagonal. And then once that's done, we can just put some filler in it.